Well, good morning and welcome to ELEVENSES. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and I'm welcoming you to Sunday. No, it's not. It's Wednesday, 29th of September. Today's show. Lovely sunny day here at the moment in London. It looks like our Indian summer has broken though, as the temperature has plummeted out there. What have we got for you today? Fairly packed show. Sad story about a Harley who has died in a crash at the age of 93 in the USA. A man copes with a traffic violation, a parking ticket in an unusual way in Bangladesh. A nice study on drivers shows the blindingly obvious. The new study on economic value of two-wheeler sector to the economy. How reliable is it? What does it actually tell us? We'll have a quick look at that as well. We also look at a cheap scan which claims to show if helmets are fit for use after being dropped. And then we'll look at a couple of motorcycle related things. Suzuki have launched their latest variation on a theme. It's the GT version of the 1000cc engine. And Zero are launching a GT pack with their SRS models. Finally, I'll finish up with our talking point today, which will be about stolen motorcycles again, unfortunately, but a new initiative and a new acronym to me, DASA, DASA presumably, I don't know. Anyway, settle yourselves down. You'll be here for the next 30 minutes or so if you watch through to the end. And the one thing I do want to do, just a quick reminder before we go any further, is to let you know that the science of being seen, we're going very buggy this morning. We seem to have lagged completely. What's going on here? Not sure what's going on. Just the computer's running fine. It must be the internet again. The Science Being Seen online presentation. It's the one that you may have encountered on Biker because I created it for the Biker courses, and it was run by many of the fire services across the UK for quite a few years. They've now dropped it, sadly, but if you want to see my version of it, updated with all the latest information about science, do drop me a line and I will, or you can book a ticket at the link which is in the header for the show. That's on Wednesday, 6th of October at 8 o'clock. Right, so just trying to see why we've got a problem with the lag on the show this morning. Seems to have settled down a bit. I can't see any obvious reasons. So, right, okay. So what was the first story today? Well, sadly, a bit of bad news. Leslie Sin was out riding his 2011 Harley. It actually looks like a three-wheeler, but it's a bit difficult to tell from the only photo that was provided. But he was in central Minnesota riding on a highway near his home on Sunday afternoon when he collided with a driver in an SUV traveling in the opposite direction. Sadly, he suffered major injuries and died at the crash scene. The 62-year-old driver of the Ford, she was taken to hospital with serious but not life-threatening injuries. The exact circumstances aren't clear, but one report at least suggested the rider had actually lost control and crashed into the SUV. But the interesting point really, was that he was 93 years old and he'd been apparently riding for 70 years plus since he bought his first Harley, and he'd been a fan of the brand and he'd been a rider ever since. Not much I can say to that really, except condolences, but I just hope I can ride for as long as that. Who's looked in this morning? Paul's here. Hello, Paul. Good to see you. You say you've caught the live broadcast, and Nigel is also here live. So good. Great to see you both. Don't forget, if you have any comments, questions, feedback on the show, do drop me a line and I will do my best to get back to you. Now, I imagine most of us have probably had a conversation with the police at one point or another. I certainly have. although remarkably few actually over my years as a motorcycle courier, but I won't say it didn't happen. Because it did, normally amicable, nothing to report really that any problems with the police or anything like that. But this rider in Dhaka in Bangladesh has seemingly had one too many conversations with the local law enforcement authorities, because Shawkat Ali actually set fire to his own motorcycle there in frustration following a dispute with a police officer on Monday. Now, it seems that Shawkat, who formerly had a small business sort of in the sanitary industry, which had been closed due to COVID, had turned to ride sharing to make a living over the past few months. And he was waiting for a passenger at around 9 a.m. And while he was waiting, a police traffic sergeant apparently approached him and took off his driver's license and registration documents, which seems to be the prelude to issuing a traffic violation penalty. Now, Shawkat pleaded with the policeman, but when he wouldn't return to the documents, he set his bike on fire. A spokesman for the local traffic department said when the police took his documents today, he got emotional and set the two-wheeler on fire out of frustration, and revealed that there had already been several cases filed against that particular motorcycle. He explained that the police officer involved had taken the papers of other bikers and had filed cases, since, he says, parking motorcycles on the road in such a way obstructs vehicular movement in the busy intersection during rush hours. Now, this is the really bizarre bit, because after torching his bike, Shawkat apparently didn't get prosecuted after all, despite taking the documents. Police did not impose a fine against him. He says, the spokesman said, in fact, we've let him go after hearing all the details. Well, perhaps that was because there was nothing left to file a case against. So, yeah, rather another sort of slightly bizarre case there. But yes, we all do get a bit frustrated with parking restrictions and things. Don't forget, if you can set a reminder for the show, it goes out on Sundays and Wednesdays at 11 a.m. and usually out live. I've missed a couple, unfortunately, and I missed one just a week ago due to illness. Now, for those of you who said man flu, I'm very glad to prove you wrong. I actually did have an infection, which is currently being treated with a course of antibiotics. So I did actually feel really ill, and I felt really ill for a real reason. So yes, I can distinctly turn away the man flu accusations. So I did meant to thank you people last week for their wishes to get well soon. I do feel quite a lot better, actually, I have to say. I'm still not functioning 100%, but it's getting closer, and hopefully after a few more days on the anti-bug treatment, I will be back to whatever passes for normal in my form of life. Okay. Now, one of the things that I love are finding articles that produce what appears to be a really scary result until you actually start thinking a little bit more detail, critical thinking basically, about the information that's being imparted. And the recent study of 2,000 UK drivers by Euro Car Parts, which clearly gets people clicking on their links and hopefully aware of the brand. That's what these studies are for. The results came up with a shock headline. 70% of UK drivers admit their vision is worse than when they passed their test. Sounds horrible, doesn't it? Awful. But why not? Why wouldn't you expect that? Because very few of us experience the reverse of actually eyesight getting better with age. It simply doesn't happen very often. You know, virtually everybody's eyesight deteriorates as we get older. And by a process of time elapsing, we have to be older now than when we took the test, even if the test was only last week. Well, how much of a problem is it? Well, I don't want to trivialize, but because any issue to do with safety does require addressing with some caution. But around 200 accidents in the UK every year are attributed to uncorrected or defective eyesight. That's Department for Transport data for 2018. And it basically shows that around 53 of these were serious incidents and 3 resulted in fatalities. But that's out of a total of 25,000 serious injuries and 1,770 reported road deaths. That's rather less than 0.2% of fatal crashes resulting from defective eyesight. So for all you riders out there who think that it's blind drivers who cause bike crashes, remember that it isn't. Drivers are not, generally speaking, blind, and most of them do not have eyesight which is so badly defective they can't see what they're doing, and that's why we need presentations like the Science of Being Seen, just to help remind us what the real problems are. And that led me rather neatly onto a second study, which again shows us why it's important that we don't accept at face value things that we read. Now, this is a new piece of research by Oxford Economics. I didn't look them up to find out who they are and what their role in life is, but I suspect it's probably to produce industry sort of pumping propaganda, because what it does is it tries to explain that the benefits brought to the economy by a healthy powered two-wheeler industry, and which all sounds well and good, doesn't it? And they also want to flag up what they call significant mobility, time savings and environmental benefits to using powered two-wheelers. Now, not surprisingly, it's hit the news feeds in a big way. It's been in the bike press, it's all over the sort of various news websites, and it's all there out there to show just how good motorcycling is, not just for us riders but for the whole community. So what does it tell us, and let's try to put it in context. Well, it says the motorcycle sector in the EU and the UK supports about 389,000 jobs. And it goes on to explain those are in the manufacturing of vehicles, parts and accessories, and the personal protective equipment industry, as well as via motorcycle related activities. All well and good, until you realise that at the end of 2019, the same study period, there were something over 200 million jobs with people working in them in the EU. I didn't even include the UK. They also go on to say that 2.14 billion of gross domestic product was created directly by the motorcycle sector, with around 1.8 times that created indirectly. So again, that sounds pretty good until you realise that in 2019, the same study period, the EU's total GDP was 14 trillion euros. So really, it's you should get the picture here. It's small beer in the grand scheme of things. So again, when they say that the motorcycle sector generated about 16.6 billion euro, well, taxes are always welcome, but it's hard to say that that makes motorcycling an important contributor to public finances, particularly in large markets like Germany, France, Italy, UK, and Spain. So context is absolutely everything. What we can say, though, is that motorcycle leisure, sports and events do have a fairly significant positive benefit, because much of that does actually happen at a very local level. And so much of the benefit goes directly to the local communities. For example, there were 12 MotoGP races in Europe last year, and they attracted 1.8 million spectators. I don't know how many trade and promotional events there were, but they produced around 2.5 million attendees and supported about 38,000 jobs. So there is some direct benefit there, but still, relatively speaking, there are probably more people working Nando's. A scenario analysis suggested that if 5% of those who switch from car to bike across Europe, that's 5.3 million commuters, the aggregate time savings would be 21 million days per annum. And that says it's worth a saving of 3 billion. Now, that's always a little bit hard to quantify. Many of these studies are based on very limited data. There's one famous piece of work which keeps coming up, which purports to show how much quicker people would get to work if 1 in 10 drivers switched to motorcycles. It was a piece of research that was carried out in the EU. I think it was the Netherlands, or it might have been Belgium. I can't remember. Belgium, I think. Well, when you actually read the study, it wasn't actually a real study. They didn't actually take 1 in 10 drivers out of the cars and tell them to ride a motorbike for a week to see what happened. It was actually a computer simulation, and it covered just one road over sort of a dozen kilometers or so. So it hardly extrapolates to the entire sort of European market. Anyway, you get the usual reports that motorcycles have a smaller environmental footprint of four-wheelers, which isn't true if you look at average powered two-wheelers, which emits just under half the CO2 per kilometre of the average car. But it doesn't mean, as supporters of motorcycles generally claim, that all motorcycles are cleaner than cars. They aren't, and the opposite is actually true. If you look at a large capacity motorcycle and you use it for the same kind of journey that somebody can do in a small car, 50 miles up a motorway or something, the big bike is actually likely to be dirtier than the small car. I also dispute the cost-saving benefits of PTWs, because again, it's the same problem there. You're comparing the average car with the average motorcycle, and generally speaking, the average motorcycle is much towards the small cc end of things, whereas the average car isn't. You run any bike 600 cc up and it probably costs you as much to run as a sort of a Toyota Aygo or something. Anyway, with that proviso firmly in mind, the usual claim was made that PTWs offer substantial savings due to lower fuel costs and operating expenses, if you can get fuel, of course, today. So they reckon that you can cut your cost of commuting by around 2/3. So yes, it's a strong case for PTWs, but you shouldn't wheel it out, if I can use that pun, uncritically, which of course is what immediately happened. Okay, so don't forget, if you enjoy the show, you can head over to my coffee page there, Survival Skills, and you can support me over there, and you'll open up access to the back catalogue of Facebook articles, the skills on Saturday and the tips on Tuesday posts. And I've just put the posts up for March 2019. So at the moment, you've got every post up from 2014 right through to 2018. So that's 5 years. That's 100 posts a year. So that's 5 years, 500 years, isn't it? 500 posts over those 5 years. And there are now another 30 odd to join them. The rest of 2019 is going up as soon as I can, and I'm dual posting this year's posts for 2021 as they go up on Facebook. They also go up on Coffee more or less simultaneously. So that's a huge archive of better biking posts and lots of other interesting stuff as well. And just a £3 coffee gets you access to that for a month. So do pop over there, have a look, read some of the free content, and if you think it's worth it, why not buy me a hot drink? Okay, now, have you ever bought a new helmet and promptly dropped it? Yeah, I did. I can still remember the helmet. It was a brand new full face. It was a lovely color scheme. I think it was a Troy Corsa replica or something. It was a Suami, and I put it very carefully down on the pavement. There was a sort of grassy bank behind the curb, and as I did, somebody next to me stepped backwards and promptly kicked it off the grass over, and it rolled over the curb, dropped onto the road surface, and rolled across the road. I actually got my money back on the helmet. There was so much damage to the lacquer and the paintwork on it from a sort of 4-inch drop that even the dealer confessed that it wasn't good for a £200 helmet, and took it back. That was sort of our equivalent price at the time. Yeah, so generally speaking, I do look after helmets fairly well, but accidents do happen and people do drop expensive new helmets. So I was quite interested to see in MCN this week that they run a story that a new service has been set up that claims to be able to scan your helmet shell for hidden signs of damage or degradation, and for only £39.99. The MCN report explains the reason. If you accidentally dropped your helmet, there was no way of checking if the composite fibre shell had been weakened, leaving manufacturers' only safe course of action being to recommend replacement. Well, of course, they would as well, because it means another helmet sale, doesn't it? But anyway, according to the report, the helmet inspection company are using a non-destructive technique, which involves a laser creating a 3D holographic image to a very high level of detail by moving the laser around the helmet to sort of create this scan. And then basically what they do is they warm the helmet up slightly, and what happens is any damaged areas apparently expand at a slightly different rate to the undamaged zones. So you can pick that change up with the 3D scan, and very quickly you can see if the helmet has any areas which should stop you from wearing it. The technique is apparently based on one used for composite materials used in the hulls of lifeboats and submarines. Does it work for motorcycle helmets? I have no idea. I can't see any obvious reason it can't, although I'd have to do a bit more background research. But I can't help thinking that the checking a submarine hull probably requires a completely different level of equipment to that, which can produce a 40 quid scan. Nevertheless, probably worth looking into. Although do remember that long term, it's the interior of the helmet and the fittings, like the chin strap, which will deteriorate actually more than the composite material in the shell. So you might have a perfectly good shell on the outside, but an expanded polystyrene liner inside, which is basically only fit for the bin. Okay, so next story. Another month, another version of the venerable GSX R1000 engine. If you remember the days when every autumn and every the show season brought us a raft of innovative motorcycles, those days are long gone. So Suzuki's big offering is another dressed up 1000cc four-cylinder. Now, back in the spring, you may remember we got the GSX S 1000 naked. Then came the limited power 950, which is designed to be restricted down to the A2 compliant 47 horsepower limit, and thus to bring the big bike experience to younger riders. Well, the latest offering is this one here. If I can get the picture up on screen. There we go. That is the new 2022 GSX 1000 GT. It's, as you can see, fully faired sports tourer. It gets the Euro 5 compliant 99C inline 4, liquid cooled, double overhead cam, 150 horsepower, 11,000 RPM, 79.7 pound-feet of torque at 9,250. It's the same tune as the naked, apparently. So basically, that engine is slotted straight in, and you just get the new bodywork. But what this bike aims to bring to the table, which is slightly different, is rider comfort. So you get a new touring-friendly screen, which rather interestingly moves away from the sort of the iconic stacked headlights of the GSX-R to something that looks much more like the Yamaha R1, which is very interesting. So presumably there's a reason for that. I have no idea what it is. You get a taller screen as well. The bars are higher. They're also rubber mounted feet. So you sacrifice a bit of fuel through the handlebars for vibration resistance. Foot pegs are also rubber mounted. You get a new all-day seat, and the passenger gets some proper grab rails plus a perch, even though that doesn't look particularly user-friendly to me. But at least I get something to hang on to. One upgrade the bike does get is a full 6.5-inch full-color TFT, replacing the LCD dash on the GSX 1100. You get smartphone connectivity built in. The system therefore allows you to use navigation, music, and call control via the GT user interface. You get the same braking and suspension system as the GSX-S, but for some reason you get lightweight 6-spoke cast wheels on this model. I'm not entirely sure why they feel the wheels need changing, but hey ho. You get the SIRS electronic suite and the LED package I've already sort of alluded to. The headlights are LED, the rest of the lights are also LED. And the colours are fairly understated by some of the modern standards. That's I think that must be the royal blue version. There's also a navy blue and a gloss black, and you should find those in dealerships in November for a price of around £14,000. Now, I rather like that. I think that's rather pretty. And if only they brought out a 600cc version with 70 odd horsepower, I would be very happy. I just don't need 150 horsepower, and I certainly don't need the expense of running a bike with that kind of output. Now, just before I carry on with the next story, Nigel's just said, I understand that a helmet drop without the head inside is unlikely to cause structural failure without showing serious damage to the outside. Well, actually, I understood from an RI helmet technician that the opposite is true. A helmet is designed to land with the weight of the head in it and potentially the entire body actually bearing down on the helmet. So the fact, what I understood was that in fact, if all that's involved is the weight of Oh, sorry, I've just I'll reread what you just said. You said it's unlikely to cause structural failure without showing serious damage to the outside. So yes, I fully concur with that. Yes, that's exactly how I understand it. The shell is that resistant to impact damage. Because it is designed to incorporate the weight of the head within it. So for a small drop, then it's unlikely to be damaged. That's exactly what I understood. So yes, we were in agreement there. Sorry, Nigel, just misread your point slightly. Okay. Moving on from Suzuki to Zero. Now, touring on an electric motorcycle may not be the most obvious option, but the big Zeros, I think, are capable enough bikes, and whilst I don't think you'll get anything like the claimed full range of 160 miles on a single charge when touring, my own test ride of the SRF Naked suggested about 100 miles is probably more likely. That's still 2+ hours of riding in the UK on sort of pleasant cross-country roads. You probably get a little bit run out of juice a little bit quicker in France or somewhere because you just tend to travel that much quicker. But yeah, assuming you're not using the motorway, that's still a decent distance until your bottom probably needs a brake. And once equipped with the fast charge system, of course, you can actually get about 80% of your battery life back over an hour's lunch stop. So, a couple of 100 miles of relaxed riding with intermediate stops is a real option, just as long as you can find somewhere to plug the bike in. But assuming that you can do that, touring on an electric motorcycle isn't entirely out of the question. It just depends on what your definition of touring is, and mine is not 500 miles down the motorway in one hit. So the manufacturer has actually released a limited edition GT pack, which converts it to a sports tourer. So what do you get for your cash? Well, you get a handy centre stand, which not only obviously gives you a chance of popping the bike up to change your tyres, but it just comes in useful generally. And you get lots of storage room via a top quality 3-box shad top box and pannier system. Now, if you wish to upgrade your current Zero SRS, you can fit this GT pack, and it comes as an optional extra, and it's priced at 1,150 euros. I don't actually have a sterling price for that, but probably knock off the 150 and you won't be far off. But here's the really good news. The GT pack will be included with all unregistered SRS models, whether they are the standard or the premium versions, which are purchased between now and December 31st. So there's a fairly significant saving, and will set you up with an electric touring motorcycle ready for next season. Okay, so let's finish off with today's talking point. And again, I've got another photo here of fairly brazen theft going on. Let me get that up on screen. Here it is, dum-de-dum, just a moment. There we go. Just zoom in on that a little bit. You can see what's going on there. The bike is being pinched in broad daylight, and you can see that the particular machine involved is a red and white Honda CBR. I can give you the registration number. It's GX, so it's Golf X-Ray 13 NEY, November Echo Yankee. And that bike was taken from the Thamesgate car park in Gravesend on Saturday at around 6:30. So the whole thing was caught on the security, whoops, that was the wrong button. It was caught on the security camera, and you can see the, looks like one of the riders actually making a gesture, probably knowing that they're on camera. You can see the rider on the bike is being propelled by a foot on the exhaust system by the look of it. Or foot peg or something. You can also see a number plate on the scooter, which turns out, of course, to be fake. And the second bike there is no plate at all, blank plate. So you've got a perfectly blatant theft in broad daylight, and pretty obviously something a bit out of the usual is going on there. Needless to say, of course, there are just too many of these things happen, and we can complain about the police doing nothing about it till the cows come home. But you know, the fact is, if you ask me, it's the industry themselves who are to blame. The insurance industry, the motorcycle industry, and the manufacturers who really don't give a monkeys about this. Now, insurance really doesn't care because they balance their books anyway. You know, if your bike's stolen, they put it up on the premium. So as more bikes are stolen, everybody's premium goes up. And if you live in a rural area of low risk, then you are paying a premium to cover the loss. If you happen to live in a high risk area like I do, you pay through the nose to get insurance. Now, the industry itself, the motorcycle industry, doesn't really care because, again, each bike stolen from, particularly if it vanishes from the system and it's never recovered, it means it's a bike that needs to be replaced, and that means more bike sales. And, you know, does it matter to them if the insurance company has to take the hit for that, or you know, some poor bugger who can't get theft insurance anymore, who has to pay out? Well, not really. Meanwhile, the simple threat of theft means riders either have to fit aftermarket alarms and immobilizers or chains that look like they could probably anchor the QE2 to even get insurance in the first place. You know, and or they choose to do so because they don't want to risk losing their bike and going through the months of hassle and the loaded premiums that will undoubtedly follow. And bike manufacturers themselves are just as much to blame because they don't care, because there's no comeback to them. And this is the point I sort of want to make actually today, is that there doesn't seem to be any regular or standard testing towards theft protection of motorcyclists. Now, magazines, in my opinion, could do a lot more. Maybe there's a item there for Fortnite if they haven't done one. Autocar ran a security test on cars just as recently as March, and they highlighted the flaws in the keyless ignition system, something they've been flagging up for a decade. But I cannot remember a security test on motorcycles themselves since about 1980, when I remember reading a test on the old steering lock column lock, the one that was actually built into the steering lock column, versus that has become the now standard ignition barrel lock system. As far as I recall, they weren't particularly impressed with either, but if they thought one worked, it was the column lock. At least it was a little bit harder to break. Manufacturers will spend millions developing self-leveling suspension or fitting these LED displays that change color in the dark, and which help them to flog a bike at a price that would make a small car, quite frankly, affordable. But there's still NAFL security fitted, and I get really frustrated with this. There's no way I'd anything valuable, even vaguely nickable, sitting here on the front drive here in London. So what's being done? Well, damned if I know, but one story that did pop up that could give us a little hope that some research in sort of a very closely related field could cross over to our powered two-wheelers. Now, we tend to use the word acronym to refer to any organisation made up from the initial letters of a longer phrase. And one we're probably familiar with is DVSA, Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency. But this morning, I was stopped in my tracks by a news story which told me that the DASA is exploring innovative ways to explore ways to bring e-scooters and e-bikes to a halt. So who and what and where are the DASA? Well, it turns out to be a Ministry of Defence offshoot. It stands for the Defence and Security Accelerator, which has to be one of the weirdest names I've ever come across. But anyway, to get on to the meat of the point, the press release says that lawfully used e-scooters and e-bikes have many positive benefits, such as portability and eco-friendliness. However, when used unlawfully, UK policing services face several challenges when trying to bring these vehicles to a controlled stop without risk to rider, public or police officers. And they go on to cite the lack of protective equipment such as helmets worn by unlawful riders, especially when travelling at high speed, the high wheels and high centre of gravity of e-scooters, which makes the rider vulnerable when losing control of the vehicle. So essentially what they want are solutions from innovators, or even just ideas for portable means for tackling e-scooter and e-bike enabled crime. And ideally that would prevent the crime from being committed in the first place. But if it is committed, they want to be able to track the offending vehicle and bring it to a control stop if they possibly can. And I have to say that to me, that sounds just like what's needed to help control motorcycle theft. So maybe, with the interest being shown by the DASA, which I'll just remind you is the Defence and Security Accelerator, just maybe we will find a bit more interest in motorcycle defence mechanisms too. Okay, that's pretty much it for today's show. Actually, just to remind you about that presentation, do look in on that if you want to find out more about why drivers collide with motorcycles at junctions. If I can just find the link, I will flag it up for you. That's on Wednesday, 6th of October and 8 o'clock. And the tickets for that are just £5. I've got a few left, so do look in if you possibly can. Links just going up on screen now. And with that, I will say that's it for today's show. Ride safe out there. And if you're on the roads, and at least it's a nice sunny day here in the south of England. So enjoy your riding.